Hey everyone, and welcome to skillcapped's tier list and rundown for patch 10.9. Boy, there are some big changes this patch, with some long-standing overpowered champions finally getting nerfs, along with some buffs that I can guarantee will at least send one champion into the OP category for his role. Not to mention a massive buff to an item no one was expecting, which just may change the top lane meta. Speaking of the meta, is it just me, or has the support meta consisted of the same three tanks, Leona, Nautilus, Blitzcrank, for way too long now? Do you enjoy the support meta, or would you prefer to see a different one? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure that you subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon to keep up to date with the latest strategies and start taking your game to the next level. Alright, let's jump straight into it, starting with item changes. Sanguine Blade is receiving a buff, and it's quite a big one. Its recipe cost is being reduced from 1100 to 1000, while the attack damage is being increased from 50 to 55. For those who don't remember what Sanguine Blade does, we don't blame you. With these changes, it will now have a total cost of 3000 gold, give 55 attack damage, 15% lifesteal, and 10 lethality. But it's most known for its unique passive, Blood Pursuit, where as long as you're near one or fewer visible enemy champions, you gain 8 lethality and 20 to 80% bonus attack speed based on level. What this means is that this item is extremely strong on split pushers top lane that can take advantage of its passive. But there's a problem. The stats it gives aren't that useful on melee champions since it's all raw damage. So instead, it's ranged AD top laners that will benefit the most from this buff. These are champions like Vayne, Quinn, and Graves. So definitely be on the lookout for these champions becoming stronger and to get picked more in your games. But before we move on to the tier list, I quickly want to mention that if you're not signed up to skillcapped, then you're missing out big time. We just hit over 800 guides on our website, which are the best on the internet. With challenger tailored courses we've spent hundreds of hours perfecting, you're sure to improve. We're so confident in this that you can see what rank we think you'll hit before signing up for the long-term plan. If you don't hit that rank while actively using skillcapped, then you'll be eligible to claim a full refund. So there's literally no risk. Jumping back into it, flying to the island that is top lane, we have some big nerfs to Wukong. He will be having his armor reduced from 34 to 31, his Q damage lowered from 30 to 130 to 20 to 120, and his clone damage from 40 to 60 to 35 to 55%. Now, one thing to realize is that although Wukong is losing 3 base armor, it's that his passive Stone Skin can give him up to 30 armor at max stacks at level 1, so the 3 armor nerf isn't as big as it would be on other champions. It's really the damage being lowered on his Q and his clone that is the real nerf. With that being said, Wukong currently has the highest win rate in top lane at 55%. That's absolutely insane considering that he's also picked or banned in 40% of all games. So yes, the damage nerf is significant, but when you have some of the most insane stats on the patch, we think that those nerfs can't make him drop down too far. That's why we think that it's safe to say that Wukong will still remain in the OP tier, and that speaks more to just how strong he was prior to these nerfs than the nerfs themselves. Moving on to buffs for the top lane, Quinn is having her Q near sight duration increased from 1.5 to 1.75. We're not gonna lie, this is an extremely small buff, but you have to keep in mind that the Sanguine Blade buffs that we went over earlier will massively benefit Quinn top. And it's mainly due to these item buffs that we're increasing Quinn into the A tier from the B tier. Cho'Gath will also be receiving a buff with his E damage being increased from 22 to 70 to 22 to 84. Now, at first this may seem like a small buff, but if you max E first, you'll be getting around an extra 40 damage per cast. We'll be keeping Cho'Gath in the B tier, but putting him at the top of it. Moving on, Gnar is having his Mega QCD refund increased from 60 to 70%, and his Mega E damage increased by a whopping flat 30 at all levels. However, since these buffs only apply to his Mega Gnar form, it does make them slightly weaker than they appear. Currently, Gnar is sitting at a low win rate of 49%, and we just don't see how these specific buffs will give him the boost that he needs. For these reasons, we'll be keeping him at the top of the C tier for now. Alright, now for the tier list. In the OP tier, you'll find Kled, Fiora, and Wukong. Kled and Fiora are the strongest champions that make use of the new buffed items such as Blade of the Ruined King, Death's Dance, and the 2 upgrades for Tiamat, Titanic Hydra and Ravenous Hydra. However, it's really Kled that is shining above the rest. He has the second highest win rate in top lane at 54%, and with the Wukong nerfs, he might just take the top spot now. What's insane about this though is how he's only banned in 3% of games. So he's definitely a sleeper OP champion that the rest of the server still hasn't caught onto just yet. The other champions that you want to be on the lookout for this patch are the ranged AD champions like Vayne, Quinn, and Graves. With so many nerfs going down these past few months to all the top tier melee champions like Set, Darius, and Garen, that's already an indirect buff to other champions that were left untouched. When you combine that with the massive buff to Sanguine Blade, well, we may just see a bigger rise in the ranged top laners than most players expect. For low elo picks this patch, that's for gold and below, we recommend Tryndamere, Jax, and Mordekaiser. Split pushing is really the most effective way to 1v9 and carry yourself out of low elo, and Tryndamere and Jax are the best picks for that playstyle right now. While Mordekaiser is the simpler to play, more traditional stat checking top laner. For bans, we recommend Wukong, Mordekaiser, Maokai, and Darius. These are all champions with around a 10% or higher pick rate, so you'll see them the most often while all being S tier champions or stronger. Sweeping into the jungle, we have one of the biggest buffs we've ever seen to Kayn. His Q cooldown is being reduced by a flat second, and his W slow is being increased from 70 to 90%, which is insane. On top of that, his Q bonus damage now applies to minions, so hey, maybe we'll even be seeing Kayn in the solo lanes. To get an idea of why these buffs are so crazy is that the jungle changes last patch massively buffed farming junglers. In fact, they're kind of the meta now. Kayn, specifically in his red form, was already a super strong farming jungler in his own right, being an S tier jungler. We think that these buffs will be enough to actually push him into the OP bracket. Fiddlesticks is also receiving a buff, with his E damage being increased from 70 to 190 to 70 to 210. Now, Riot is labeling these buffs as being directed towards support Fiddlesticks, but with support Fiddlesticks having a 47% win rate and 1% pick rate, we don't really think this buff is going to do anything there. Compare that to the jungle where he has a 52% win rate and 5% pick rate. The reason why these are classified as buffs to support Fiddlesticks is that it only increases his E damage at max rank, and when played in the jungle, Fiddlesticks maxes his W into Q with his E last. So yeah, these buffs will only really kick in at level 18 when in the jungle, but that's actually when Fiddlesticks is the strongest statistically. Overall, Fiddlesticks is looking to be in a good spot anyways after the buffs on previous patches, and so will be increased from B tier into the A tier for now. We have another strange change in the jungle, with Karthus finally receiving a nerf, but to his movement speed. It's being lowered from 335 to 325. For those of you who have been living under a rock, Karthus has been considered an OP pick in high elo for over a year and a half. Most players were excited to hear he was finally getting a nerf, but hitting his movement speed definitely came as a surprise, with most expecting a nerf to his damage to jungle monsters. On one hand, the lower movement speed will slightly inhibit his ability to clear as he's moving slower from camp to camp, but with him being able to clear so quickly, that's not really a big deal. The real issue is how it impacts his ability to gank and teamfight, since with 325 base movement speed, that now makes him slower than Yuumi. We have to be honest, we're not that big of a fan of this change. As any mid lane Karthus mains will now be even weaker, and Karthus will likely still be an OP pick, just even more unsatisfying to play. But what do you guys think? Do you think this is a good change, and if not, what do you think Karthus needs to be balanced? Trundle is also receiving a nerf, with his ultimate cooldown being increased from 100 to 60 to 120 to 80. This nerf is mainly aimed at pro play where he's a highly contested pick. Even so, it's a relatively minor nerf, and we expect Trundle to stay in the A tier for solo queue. Moving on to the jungle tier list, the farming jungler meta is in full swing. You'll notice that Zac, Graves, Karthus, and Kayn are in the OP tier, with all 4 of them being the strongest scaling farming junglers at the moment. Olaf is the only remnant of the aggro meta left, and that's simply due to his insane 1v1 potential and clear speed despite being so strong early. However, one interesting thing that we want to draw your attention to is how, with the decline in aggressive junglers and rise in farming junglers, we've also seen a rise in assassin junglers, most notably Rengar and Shaco. The rise in Rengar makes a lot of sense. The rise in farming junglers means that he has more time to farm to level 6 in the early game, along with the fact that he rushes Tiamat and has great clear speed. So don't be surprised if you spot a few more Rengar players than usual in your games. For the low elo picks this patch, that's gold and below, we recommend Warwick, Kayn, and Master Yi. We're adding Kayn to our low elo recommendations as we think his power levels are getting to crazy heights while being a very forgiving champion to play due to his healing. Just be sure that you're playing him in his red form. For bans, we recommend Wukong, Graves, and Echo. Wukong is busted and is played in several different roles, so he has to be banned. Graves has the second highest pick rate, found in 13% of all games, while being in the OP bracket. And Echo also has the highest pick rate of 11% while also being in the OP bracket. Roaming into the mid lane changes, Lissandra is having her Q cooldown reduced from 10 to 4 seconds to 8 to 4 seconds. This is actually much bigger than people realize. Once upon a time, Lissandra was actually a top pick in mid lane. One of the biggest contributors to her downfall was when Riot nerfed her Q cooldown on patch 9.7, increasing it to 10 seconds from 6 at level 1. Since that nerf, Riot has given Lissandra a ton of other buffs, increasing the AP ratio on literally every single one of her abilities. With Riot now semi-reverting this Q cooldown nerf after all of these buffs, we could very well see Lissandra form a glacial path back into the meta. This is definitely enough to put Lissandra at the top of the A tier, but we wouldn't be surprised if she ends up at the bottom of the S tier. Jumping into the tier list, not that much has changed since last patch. In the OP bracket, we still have the regulars, Kassadin, Diana, Echo, Fizz, and Katarina. However, we've now added Talan back into it. It's actually crazy when you think about it. Talan got a massive nerf in patch 10.7, and yet it didn't even impact his win rate at all. When you combine that with shared kill XP and new home guard on death helping combat roaming playstyles in mid lane, you'd think Talan would be declining in power, and yet the numbers don't lie. He's still one of the strongest picks. For low elo picks, that's gold and below, we recommend Kassadin, Fizz, Annie, and Talan. Pick Kassadin if you want scaling and the ability to 1v9 carry. Pick Fizz if you want to snowball through killing your lane opponent. Pick Annie if you're just learning the basics and want to keep things simple. And pick Talan if you want to execute a push into roaming playstyle. For bans, we recommend Kassadin, Diana, and Echo. Kassadin and Diana have some of the highest pick rates in mid lane at around 9%, whereas Echo is played in both mid and jungle, so by banning him, you'll be removing him from both roles at once. Kiting straight into the ADC tier list this patch, as there aren't any nerfs or buffs, likely due to the fact that there was so many meta changes last patch. But that doesn't mean there aren't changes to the tier list itself, as we're still seeing the effects of the fallout from the previous patch. Firstly, we want to mention that Misfortune is pretty much god tier at this point in the ADC position. She has one of the highest average win rates at 53%, the highest win rate for players that master her at 60%, and an insane pick rate of 18%. Misfortune is essentially a 100% pick ban status at this point. This is mainly the result of so many nerfs on previous patches going to the old top tier picks like Senna and Aphelios. Another side effect of this meta shift is that Vayne has seen a massive rise in strength, now being placed in the S tier. She also has some nutty stats, a 52% average win rate, 60% win rate for players that master her, and 14% pick rate. But if you're going to play Vayne, you need to ban out Caitlyn, who is still an S tier champion and is her main counter pick at the moment. Another interesting change is Calista, who has dropped all the way down to the C tier. It's looking like those nerfs to her Ren slow and base armor were too much for her to handle. You should also be on the lookout for the rise of non-standard ADC picks. Yasuo, Cassiopeia, Syndra, and Veigar have all seen a rise in their win rates after the ADC changes and are all strong picks at the moment. For low elo, that's gold and below, we recommend Misfortune, Caitlyn, and Ashe. Misfortune is so broken and is still straightforward to play, so can be very powerful for lower elo players. Caitlyn and Ashe are the safer picks with their high auto attack range, allowing you to learn and improve your fundamentals instead of having to focus on mastering the champion. For bans, we recommend Misfortune, Vayne, and Caitlyn. These three picks are by far the most popular, while being some of the most powerful. There really is no comparison at the moment. These are the three champions that you'll get the most bang for your buck spending your bans on. Engaging into the support changes, we have some pretty significant nerfs. Starting with Bard, he's having his W movement speed reduced from 50 to 30%, and the cooldown is being increased by 2 seconds. His E ability, which is his tunnel, is also having the cooldown increased from 18 to 14 to 22 to 16. Bard was actually in the OP tier for a while, up until a big nerf to his damage in patch 10.5. That did see his win rate initially drop, but it has been steadily increasing to the top position ever since. Currently sporting a 54% win rate, Bard is definitely deserving of a nerf. The question is, did these nerfs go too far? The nerf to his W is no joke, especially losing the flat 20% movement speed, almost cutting its power in half. And losing 4 seconds on his E cooldown at level 1 will definitely impact his ability to escape more engage-oriented supports, which are still the meta right now. We think this will prevent him from being in the OP tier and result in being in the S tier for now. Nami is also receiving a nerf. She's having her base health slightly lowered along with her base mana. Additionally, her passive movement speed is being lowered from 60 to 45. Now, Riot is saying this is mainly due to the fact that Nami is too strong in the lower elo brackets, which makes sense as she does have the highest win rate for any support at 54% in gold and below. But here's the good news for you Nami mains out there. These nerfs aren't hitting what makes her strong. None of her healing, damage, or crowd control duration is being lowered. The base stat reduction is pretty minor. It's really the movement speed nerf that is going to be the biggest. Keep in mind, the movement speed from her passive is actually doubled when touched by her ultimate. So that 15 less movement speed turns into 30 less movement speed. For now, we'll be placing her at the bottom of the S tier. Alright, moving into the tier list where we find Leona, Blitzcrank, and Nautilus still standing strong in the OP bracket. However, one of the newest additions is Support Set jumping into the S tier. Support Set is something relatively new that has popped up, and if you were to only look at its average win rate, which is 48%, you'd think it's pretty weak. Appearances can be deceiving though. For players that master Support Set, they average a win rate of 60%, one of the highest for the role. This is definitely one of those high elo picks that the rest of the player base has yet to catch on to. Don't worry though, we here at skillcapped have you covered, as we actually created a guide teaching how to play set support on our site, link in the description below. For low elo, that's gold and below, we recommend Blitzcrank, Bard, and Jaina. Blitzcrank can take advantage of the poor positioning in low elo to pick up kills. Despite the Bard nerfs, he's a fantastic carry support, letting you roam the map and generate your own scaling damage through his passive. And Jaina is our more traditional support recommendation, as she can be relatively simple to play, counters the engaged meta, and is still an S tier champion. For bans, we recommend Nautilus, Leona, Blitzcrank, and Yuumi. The 3 engaged tanks are still a priority ban due to their power and high pick rate. Yuumi, on the other hand, is an extremely annoying champion to lane against that has a lot of strong hyperscaling combos with late game champions. With the 3rd highest pick rate in the support position at 12%, she's worth a ban if you don't like facing her. Now for the section that actually matters, skins. The winner of the 2019 World Championship, FPX, are having their skin line released this patch, each costing 1350 RP. These consist of FPX Gangplank for top, FPX Lee Sin for jungle, FPX Malphite for mid lane, FPX Vayne for AD carry, and FPX Thresh for support. Each skin will come with their own elite chroma. So, which skin do you like most? I think personally I have to go with FPX Vayne, as she has some cool looking wings when she uses her ultimate. Alright, we here at skillcapped put a ton of work into our new tier list, and the best way for you to show your love and support is to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video. Remember, the content you find on our YouTube channel is just a taste of the hyper improvement platform you'll find on our website. If you're serious about improving and want to rank up, there's no better time than now to go to skillcapped.com, link in the description below. And as always, good luck and have fun on Summoner's Rift.